Welcome to Wild Spirits Outdoors, the place for real hunting talk, tactics, and a few laughs. Now let's dive in with your host, Brad Dijon.
Guys and gals, welcome back to Wild Spirits Outdoors. If you're listening on the day of the drop, today is Tuesday, March 24th, 2026. Today is going to be another special episode. I'm going to be joined remotely by Jordan Hoover. For those of you that listened back to Jordan and I's first conversation together in that two-part series on Michigan deer regulations, we're rapidly approaching the finish line for the NRC regulation changes or non-changes, because I don't know exactly what's going to take place, but April 8th is the last NRC meeting before they will make their votes and make their determinations for the next 3-year cycle as to what the deer regulations here in the state of Michigan are. Jordan and I have continued to develop a pretty good friendship since our initial conversation, and we have messaged back and forth. And Jordan reached out to me and he said, "Hey man, we are rapidly approaching the finish line," and he asked if we could get something set up to get another recording and get him back in studio remote to have another quick conversation regarding what's taking place, regarding what's going on, and to really make this push going into the April 8th NRC meeting, where I think it's going to be beneficial to have just a record turnout. So I have not yet started the recording with Jordan. In fact, we are scheduled to get on Zoom here in 10 minutes. Today is March 20th, and we are going to record this, and then I will edit and get this out for the Tuesday, March 24th release, as always. So I'm excited to see what Jordan has to say. We're kind of going to fly by the seat of our pants. I do have some show notes here. I've got about 20 questions on here that I want to talk to Jordan about and get his take on. So I'm excited to see what he has to say. I will jump back on again after the recording and kind of close the episode out. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I am going to stop talking and we will roll this into the conversation with Jordan, and I will follow up with you guys after we're done talking. We'll talk to you soon. All right, I got us recording. We'll just roll into it, man. So, all right, folks, thanks for joining in once again. I got Jordan back on the line, and I'm very excited for another conversation with you, Jordan. I think there's been a little bit of moving and shaking going on since we last talked. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh man, there's been so many moving parts in this process, and I'm being brutally honest about it. This is probably the most intense, crazy deer regulation cycle I've ever seen.
Man, that's saying something, because I know there's been a lot of turbulence with Michigan deer regs really over the past several years. So for this one to be topping it or taking the cake, that's definitely saying something. So I've had a few different people reach out to me. In fact, I had Paul Sickinga, the counterpart from the Lower Peninsula, who wanted to get on, and he and I had that conversation. He reached out to me, you reached out to me, and everybody was kind of like, "Hey man, I don't know what's going on, but there's some stuff going on. So let's just turn the temperature down on the simmer pot for a minute and figure out what exactly is going on." So do we have a little bit of direction now so we can dive into a little bit of this, hopefully, and kind of see what's shaking?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm feeling pretty positive about the direction that things seem to be headed. And there were certainly some rough waters there for a while and a lot of uncertainty. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know for a fact what's going to cross the finish line, but
Sure.
I'm certainly getting some encouraging feedback from the NRC, from the DNR, and I'm optimistic about the future.
Awesome. Okay. So first and foremost, I got to ask you, did the Department of Natural Resources suspend the DAT?
Um, yes, that is true. And about, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes after the email went out, my DMs and my telephone started on fire.
I can imagine.
other team members and whatnot, like, Jordan, what's going on? What are they doing? You know, some of the team was pretty upset, as you can imagine. Um, so the rationale, because the next question is, well, why would they do that?
And that was where I was going. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the rationale that I got in speaking to the department was they have never been under such intensive pressure in a deer regulation cycle as they are right now, and that the Natural Resources Commission was asking for a lot of data on a lot of subjects and really applying some pressure to the department in a big way as well. And that they just simply lacked the staff and the man hours to be able to comply with everything that was being asked of them, and something had to give.
Okay.
Um, do I like that answer? Well, of course I don't. Myself and my team were dedicated to our work, and we wanted to continue on. There were other things that we wanted to talk about and work through as a team. Not so much regulatory things. We had concluded that portion of our work for the year, just to be
Sure.
clear. But there's non-regulatory concerns like habitat.
Which is a big one.
Oh, for sure. The issues with crop damage and deer densities down in portions of lower Michigan, and how do we get hunters and farmers to collaborate together, and how do we resolve some of those more non-regulatory issues that we're facing? Hunter recruitment and retention, all of those kinds of things. Everybody's well aware Michigan is hemorrhaging hunters. How do we address that? What do we think is wrong? Going through the diagnostics of those kinds of issues, and we didn't get to do that. So that was kind of disappointing, but I understand where they're coming from as well. And I do know that the department is certainly understaffed in a lot of ways. And the demands on the deer program right now are immense.
Sure. That's it.
I will offer this though. they we didn't have a February meeting because the DNR was up here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, actually not too far from where I live. You might have seen some of it online. They were conducting a moose collaring project. They put collars on 40 moose.
Yep.
So that was a pretty massive undertaking, and all the deer guys are also the moose guys, right? So they were immersed in that, and we didn't have a February meeting. And then it came to March. We found out we got suspended until June. And it's customary for the DAT team to go into summer recess, just because not everyone's a total deer freak like I am.
Sure.
People, I don't know who, but apparently some people think about things other than deer. So we wanted to allow some time for those individuals that aren't deer lunatics to decompress, be with family, to take the vacations, to do all the things.
Sure.
So we would just be off for the summer, June, July, end of August. Once the kids are back in school, the vacations are all done, then we would go back into session.
Gotcha.
So for us, between not meeting in February and potentially not meeting all the way till the end of August, I mean, you're talking about 7 months.
Yeah, which is a long time.
And there was some concern from the team about that, like, oh man, that's too long. It's not good. But I think we've had some good conversation with the department, and they're willing to resume meeting with us in June.
Okay.
Um, I don't know, what difficulties that might present for some folks. Myself, I'm willing to continue to work through the summer,
Sure.
and I think probably a good portion of our team is, and we'll certainly not hold it against anyone that takes a vacation, obviously.
Sure. Okay.
That's kind of where that's at.
Okay. So it's coming from a cynical individual such as myself. When I started hearing rumors of this, my mind immediately went to, all right, there's a mass undertaking going on to squash whatever's been talked about. Like, that's immediately what came to my mind, and it was like, here we go again, right? So this is more, am I safe in saying that this was more logistical driven than driven by the want or the pressure for the DNR to squash anything that was going on, but it was more a matter of just simple logistics with manpower and resources that just weren't there to be had? Is that fair?
Yeah, and you're not the only person that suspected a clandestine agenda, right?
Yeah.
Um, there's other people that had similar thoughts and comments, but in my purview, I'm not seeing any malice or any underlying political underpinnings. I do believe it is honestly just that the department is under such tremendous strain right now.
Which to hear them say, "Hey, we're suspending this," again, I immediately went to a really dark place. But in hearing what you're saying, where the DNR is getting immense pressure from the NRC to provide information that they're typically not pressured to provide, I can look at that in somewhat of a positive light. That tells me that really, as you had said, and even as Paul had said, this NRC seems to be taking this pretty serious. And if they're putting a lot of pressure on the DNR to provide certain data, then maybe they are in fact doing as what people suspect, which is really taking this serious. So that gives me a little bit of additional hope for what's to come. But yeah, it definitely freaked me out. There was a lot of people that were freaked out about it. I had a lot of friends when they were hearing rumors about it that were like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" And then thankfully you reached out and you're like, "Hey, I'm sure you have heard a lot of what's going on. Let's get on and let's have a chat because it does." And again, you don't know the future. I don't know the future, but from what you've told me offline leading into this conversation, although there's been a lot of turbulence, a lot of waves, a lot of shakeup really recently, things still tend to be tracking in a positive direction. We don't know exactly what that will come to fruition as, but it does seem that things are still tracking in a positive direction. So
Absolutely.
good, good. Um, so for the hunters who have been kind of involved in this, whether directly or indirectly, or the ones that have just been trying to keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on, uh, what is your message to them? Has everything that has been worked on up to this point for naught, or is it still looking like what you guys have worked to is not just being thrown away because sessions were suspended, but that stuff is still actively engaged in the conversation?
Yeah. So as far as the specificity of the deer advisory team's recommendation to move to a 1 buck system, that is very much still in play. It is on the table. It is actively in discussion. And at this point, I mean, it's down to the final cutting board.
Yeah, we're right there. Let's see here. Things that are currently standing with the DNT recommendations, in addition to 1 buck. Anything that you guys have brought to the table aside from 1 buck, is that stuff, some of it or all of it, still on the table?
So that was the standalone recommendation from the DAT because this year we basically focused all of our energy, all of our efforts, all of our time into buck regs because
Yep.
we knew last year when we wrapped up our session, this is what we needed to do this year. Like
Mm-hmm.
this moment was already building at the end of last cycle in 2025.
Right.
Um, and there's been other tertiary discussions, amongst the DAT team in unofficial capacity or some of us from the team communicating with the department or communicating with commissioners. So there's other agenda items, I guess. We can just bullet point fashion some of those.
Sure.
So one of those would be um, you've been able to purchase 10 over-the-counter antlerless tags. And for some people, they think that's great. And other people are like, holy cow, nobody needs to be killing 10 does. Well, in some places, they need to be killing 20 does.
Sure.
Um, and that's a whole nother discussion, right? Like regionally appropriate antlerless harvest. But with respect to the OTC tags, there was some sentiment that was expressed that the public has a hard time swallowing sometimes. Well, my neighbor here with the 40's got 5 guys hunting over there, and if they can all buy 10 doe tags apiece, holy crap.
Yeah.
So then what do? You don't shoot any does because you're afraid the neighbor to your left is going to just blow them away, right? Except he's thinking the same thing that you're thinking, and he didn't shoot any does either.
Right.
So it creates kind of a little social snafu there.
Yeah.
And the reality is that the vast majority of Michigan hunters are simply not shooting does.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yep.
the statistic from 2025 showed us that 80% of Michigan hunters failed to shoot even a single doe during the 2025 season. Not even one.
Yep.
So you can rest assured that your neighbor is not out there blowing away 10 does unless he is one exceptional, 1%er in the deer world. It's just not happening. But part of that, getting back to the point, there is some discussion that's occurring within the NRC, within the DNR, about lowering that over-the-counter antlerless quota from 10 down to 5 per person. And really, biologically, it's a net zero.
Right.
It's not going to do anything because the vast majority of people aren't even shooting 5, much less 10. It's more of a social dynamic and a psychological concern.
Sure.
So that's one of the agenda items that's being discussed. Another one is the possibility of reducing muzzle loader season, or for you guys, it would be second gun as it sits.
Yeah.
Chopping that significantly down from 10 days to, I believe, 3.
Are they looking at maintaining it as a second gun season, or are they looking at reducing it and bringing it back to a true muzzleloader season, to your knowledge?
There has been discussion about that as well. I don't know where that rests, but that issue has been brought up. And there was certainly some sentiment on the team from some folks that felt really strongly that it was important to bring back that tradition of having that muzzleloader season, that meant something to them. Again, biologically, that's a potato discussion.
Sure.
Right? I mean, you're going to shoot roughly the same distance with a 450 or a 350 that you are with a 50 caliber muzzleloader. That's a 200-yard gun all day long.
Yep.
So I don't really think there's a biological level impact. It's just, again, more of a social issue and what people like versus don't. But yes, that was also a discussion tertiary to the potential for a reduction in that portion of the season. And again, I'll just reiterate as we're going through these bullet points, I am not saying this is what's happening.
Right.
I'm saying that these are discussions that are taking place. So moving on to the next bullet point, one of the other agenda items was the possibility of eliminating the rifle line. Gone. So that you could use any legal centerfire rifle anywhere in the state of Michigan, whether you're in Jackson or whether you're in Keweenaw County, don't matter.
Right.
And as you can imagine, there's some strong feelings on both sides of that argument. I don't really have a dog in that fight, being up here in the Upper Peninsula,
Yep.
but listening to other folks and my limited understanding of how the Upper Peninsula is so parcelized and so chopped up. I mean, to me, I do have a little bit of concern from a safety aspect. You start bringing out the big calibers, your Magnum rifles, your 300 Wins, your 7mm, all that kind of stuff. Those are long, flat shooting guns, and there's just a crap ton of soybean fields and cornfields. Those bullets have potential to go a long way in Lower Michigan.
Yep.
And there's not much to stop it.
Yep.
I would hate to see something bad happen. That would just be tragic.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that an accident couldn't happen with 450. Of course it could. But I think we're increasing the potential for that risk. And I do have some worry. I don't know what the ultimate ideology is, if it's just uniformity, if they think people are going to shoot more deer, if we open up the calibers more. I really don't know.
Yeah.
But that is a discussion that has happened as well.
Staying on that real quick, it's interesting to me because I live very, very close to the rifle line. I live north of it, so I can use any legal center fire, but the line is not very far south from me. And for a lot of years, as I was younger, I always understood the reasoning for that. And it's not like 350s and 450s and things like that are new. I mean, they're fairly new to the hunting world when it comes to just how much they were marketed. But I always, when we started getting into some of these more modern, even inline muzzleloaders, right? Like you said, I can take my inline 50 cal and I can shoot 200 yards all day with that. I kind of always looked at the rifle line the same way. Like with today's modern rifles, it didn't really make sense to me why they had that line. I didn't really have a dog in the fight either because I didn't hunt with a gun below that line anyway. But to your point, when I start thinking about it, if you've got guys out there with 7 mils or 6.5 Creedmoors, those guns are very flat shooting and can shoot a long ways, like you said. And on flat ground, frozen ground, you have potential for ricochets, skips that can still continue to travel a long way. So that's a point that I was always like, just get rid of it. Like over the past 10 years, that's kind of been my mindset, but I can definitely see the concern there. I can see the safety aspect of it. And going back to what you said about the muzzle loading thing, biologically speaking, is it really going to make that big of a difference one way or the other? Probably not. I don't think anyway. Safety wise, I can see where there could be some challenges there for sure.
And I don't think, and in full disclosure, I go down to Lower Michigan in the spring, early summer, and I do crop damage shooting on some farms down there. And I bring my 300 Win Mag with me. That's my weapon of choice for the job. Um, it gives me a lot of range, and it gives me a lot of punch when I get there. But we're shooting across entire soybean fields, right? I mean, like this last summer, I had a couple shots that were 500 plus.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think in those cases, especially in that time of year on private land, it's as much of an issue. I think you're going to see more of an issue where you've got a 10-acre piece, a 20-acre piece, a
Yeah.
30-acre piece, a 10-acre piece, and you can shoot across the whole damn bunch of it.
Yeah.
Which,
Plus three more parcels. Yeah.
yeah, and certainly with respect to public land, and I'll call it the pumpkin patch, right, where the sun comes up and there's orange every 100 yards in every direction. Does everybody need to be holding the? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I might be laying in the prone position if I was hunting state land this time of year.
Well, I'll tell you what, I hunt some public land. I've hunted with rifle above the rifle line, and it can get sketchy out there, man. And I'm not saying people are out there just haphazardly shooting everywhere, but
Right.
when you're only sitting on, a lot of the parcels that I hunt are sub 100-acre parcels of public land. Yeah, it can get a little sketchy out there. So I can see the concern.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm not trying to nitpick or whatever else.
Sure.
Ultimately, the commission is going to do what they're going to do with it, but it certainly kind of put up a little bit of a red flag for me with safety. I just don't want to see anybody get hurt or killed, God forbid.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
That's more than anything. I want every hunter that goes out into the field to come home to their loved ones, to their wife, to their husband, to their children, to whatever. I mean, there is nothing on earth that rocks the family more than losing someone like that. And those are just terrible, terrible things when they happen.
no, absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. Any other bullet points that were maybe non-hardline agenda items you want to touch on?
So one thing that we did talk very extensively about in the DAT, and I got to give full credit to Rochelle Hubbard. She was the author of kind of the plan, if you will, is a antlerless DMU quota system. So one of the things that we had concern about on the DAT, and a lot of Michigan hunters give voice to this as well. We kind of foreshadowed this in our earlier discussion when we talked about regionally appropriate antlerless harvest. Well,
Yeah.
this is that conversation.
Good.
So Rochelle took a lot of time and effort, consulted exhaustively with the DNR, looked at all kinds of harvest data, talked to hunters all over the state in both peninsulas, and put together kind of a heat map, if you will, that would utilize this new proposed, well, it's not proposed yet, but being considered system of 5 OTC tags. So on a county by county or a DMU by DMU level, each little zone would be assigned 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 OTC tags per person based on best available deer density data, harvest stats, car deer collision stats, all the things that they put in a blender to kind of extrapolate what deer densities might look like.
Sure.
Um, and the whole brainchild is just very simply to take a more granular approach to antlerless management, so it's not so broad brush and hunters aren't so worried about, well, should I be shooting does, should I not be shooting does, because they can look at this heat map and they can see, oh, okay, well, the DNR is listening to me because we told them last year we just weren't seeing a lot of does here, whatever, up in the Northwest 12, let's say, because I know those guys have been having that concern. So when hunters see that the department is responsive to their concerns, I think it goes a long way to building that relationship and that trust a little bit. And I mean, things happen in the natural world too. Like up here, we've had a pretty monstrous UP winter. I think we're up to like 338 inches of snow or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so in cases like that, it makes sense to turn down over the counter antlerless tags where they're available up here because we just got an ass whooping.
Yeah.
Um, Conversely, you got somewhere like the thumb. Turn that dial up, baby. We need to be killing does in the thumb of Michigan because there is a pile of deer. And it gives the department dials for each little zone that they can tailor that antlerless management exactly the way it needs to be. And it's responsive. So, for example, in the future, if we had an area that had a severe outbreak of EHD, what do? We turn the dial down.
Yep.
And I think that the department being able to take a more proactive antlerless management approach rather than reactive will be really beneficial.
No, I think that's great. And I've never spoken personally to Rochelle. I've had some conversations with her on Facebook, and from what I have talked to her and what I've seen what she has done, I have a tremendous amount of respect for what she has worked on. And I think outside of the OBR, I think that is one of the other biggest issues that the state faces, and I've harped on that for a long time. It's to me that's not chess, it's checkers. I mean, it's not hard to figure out where there's an abundance of does and where there's not very many does, and if we can set those dials and set those quotas based upon that, I think it's really going to be beneficial to the herd. And going back to what I want to make sure I understood this correctly, the official DAT recommendation is only one recommendation, correct? Am I?
Yeah.
It's the OBR recommendation is like the official DAT recommendation.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little background on the antlerless DMU recommendation because honestly, not even really sure how that is going to be processed. And here's why. So that was discussed at great length, and Rochelle gave a couple of really good presentations and did some revision to her heat map based on feedback from the team. And eventually it came down to, we're going to call the question, we're going to vote on this. And Rochelle's heat map obviously covers both peninsulas, in which case it was a statewide proposal, which would invoke the right of both the UP and the LP teams to vote together on the issue. So the way our voting metrics are established and written is that anything that crosses the finish line has to attain a 60% support rating to be considered passage. At which point, then it goes into writing, it goes to the department, it goes to the commission, it's an official recommendation. Now, the problem comes in here. Unfortunately, my UP brethren had some concerns, had some issues, and we did not reach the 60% threshold for passage in the UP. In the lower peninsula team, it passed with flying colors. I think it was like 94% support on the LP team. And if you did the math between our percentage of support and the LP percentage of support, it still would have met the required 60% cumulatively, but not individually.
Okay.
And I don't know how the department is going to look at that. If they're going to say, well, no, we want to see 60% in both peninsulas for a statewide recommendation, or if they're going to smush it together and say, well, it exceeds 60% cumulatively, so we're going to consider that passage.
Okay.
I don't know. But nonetheless, that information was passed on from Rochelle to the commission. They have it all. Um, I've heard very positive things from commissioners I've spoken to about it. They're very interested, very supportive. And I know that the department has been having conversations with the commission about that proposal.
Okay. Is there and I don't want you to say anything that you can't say or anything out of pocket, but was there sound reasoning behind some of the lack of support for that from the Upper Peninsula? Because from a troll looking at the Upper Peninsula, and one of the biggest things I hear in the Upper Peninsula is we don't have enough deer to begin with. So to me, it seems like the Upper Peninsula would have easily gotten on board with setting individual quotas based on areas to reduce the amount of doe tags allotted for certain areas and increase them for others. But was there sound reasoning as to why certain members did not want that?
Um, so that I guess is subjective. That's a matter of opinion. So I'll just go out on a limb and cut it off behind myself and give you my opinion.
Okay.
Um, no, no. And you hit the nail on the head. Of all places in the entire state of Michigan where we need to be extra sensitive about where we kill does and how many we're killing, it's the UP, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And I was astounded as I'm listening to these no votes coming in, and a lot of the no votes came from the old heads. And I'm just like, you guys do nothing but scream about does all the time.
Yeah.
And here's your chance to install better protections for does, and you're voting it down. What is going on here?
Yeah.
So, a funny tidbit, and I'm a little bit talking out of school, but I can't resist. um, so the one of the first gentlemen to vote was a very prominent stakeholder group leader, one of the old heads, and he actually voted in support. But the other older gentleman in the group actually misheard him. They thought he voted no. So one after the other, they fired right off. And they're like, yeah, I'm with him. Hell no. And the next guy's like, you're darn right. Hell no. And so then like 5 or 6 votes go by, and one of the DNR staff is like, just hold on for a second, guys. I just want to make sure we're being clear here. You are aware that the first gentleman did vote in support, and you could have heard a pin drop. But nobody was going to change your votes, right? Like, we got to save face here.
Sure.
So I think, honestly, there was a part of it that people just didn't understand what they were voting for, and there was a little bit of sheeple groupthink that happened in that moment, which is really unfortunate. That's a terribly irresponsible way to go about things, and that's no way to vote.
Sure.
I don't care what the next guy says. Like, I'm going to make my own decision. I think that's what everybody at the table is responsible to do. But in that case, in my opinion, it didn't happen that way.
Okay.
So that's what resulted in the lack of support in the UP. And honestly, I think if we sat back down and it got re-explained, there's a possibility that the vote would go differently. But unfortunately, that ship has sailed.
Right.
And the positive is, like I said, the commission does have all this information. So does the department, and there's favorable conversation being had.
Okay. Not a tangent I intended to go down, but bringing that up, is there any, and just say muskrat, if you don't want to get into this, it'll be fine, but is there any like hard line with some of the folks in the UP where they're just like, we're not talking about any of this crap until wolves are addressed? Is that something where they're just like plugging their ears and we're not going to listen, we're not going to talk about nothing because until wolves are addressed, none of this means anything to anybody?
Oh, yeah. There were some battles early on, like in the first DAT cycle. Um, and again, it's demographic based by and large. The old heads are just rabidly angry about wolves. And the comments would be made like, well, I don't know what we're doing here, because we can talk about does, and we can talk about buck rags and all this other stuff. Well, that's fine, that's great, but until we address the wolf wolves, we're just spinning our wheels. That was kind of some of the dialogue that was had early on. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend for 1 second that like wolves are not a factor. Like, it doesn't matter. Wolves eat deer,
Yeah,
and they eat a lot of them. 20 to 25,000 a year, roughly, I believe, is the estimate for wolf depredation on our UP deer herd. So it's an issue, but it's not the issue. It's
right.
one of the
Yep.
issues. And we had some pretty tough exchanges early on, and as chairman, I got to a point where I had to put my foot down too, right? So I'm like, listen, you've been heard, you've had the floor, you've made your concerns known, and now we're moving on.
Sure.
Because until the state has regulatory authority,
You can't do anything anyway.
like what are we doing here? You want to
Yeah.
talk about spinning your wheels? I mean, we're talking in circles.
I think it's great
Um,
to have that conversation. Paul, when he was here, we talked about that briefly, and I said, Paul, I understand it, but until there's a delistment, there's really nothing that can be done to do it. And he said, yeah, but it's good to have a plan. And I agree, but you only have a limited amount of time to work. That would be great stuff to talk about June, August, early on in the beginning of the session. Like, hey, maybe we start looking at setting up some kind of a forethought of plan for this. But when it comes down to, we got to set regulations, or we got to make recommendations for regulations based on what's best for the deer herd, that's a non-starter. The wolf thing is a non-starter because we can't do anything with it anyway. So I was just curious. I kind of get that feeling from some of the comments I see on social media and some of the comments that are posted to some of my podcast. Is a lot of people are just like straight up plugging their ears, and we're not going to talk about anything until somebody validates my stance on wolves. So
yeah, and I don't mind kicking the can on this issue a little bit. It's worthy of it, and I don't do it often. Um, you know, and I pointed this out in the course of our dad meeting when like I said, I had to put my foot down. I finally said, I'm like, listen, we are the deer advisory team. Our wheelhouse is deer. We have a wolf advisory council already, and this isn't it.
yeah,
But like, if you have concerns that you want to bring them to the wolf advisory council. Talk to those folks and say, hey, I want to sit down with you. I want to lay out my grievances, my concerns, and I want to hear what you have to say. That's great. Go and do that. But right now, we're here to work on deer.
sure,
And that's not to minimize. That's not to poo poo. It's just we got to stay on task, and we got a timeline. That's what it was about.
yep,
And I would love to see wolf management in place at some point in the state of Michigan. I think that we absolutely have to put the wolf in the asset column, making them a game species.
yeah, I agree.
I'm what's the biological effectiveness? Probably not much. I mean, when we look back through the pages of time, I think it was 2014, we had our air quotes wolf hunt, right? During that short window of delist. And it was something like 20, 22 wolves or something like that were shot that whole year. It was a pittance. Um, there's a lot of guys that talk about, well, yeah, I'm going to go on a wolf hunt. I'm going to go on a wolf hunt when it's legal. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what's the actual capability of your rank and file Michigan hunter to sling his rifle and trudge off into the UP wilderness, locate, track, and kill a wolf on its home turf?
Sure.
That's a tall order.
Yeah.
And if I can poke a little fun, right? A lot of that dialogue is coming from the same guys that have trouble finding deer to kill.
Sure.
Now you're going to find and kill a wolf?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No, that's a fair assessment.
And I'm not, again, I'm just poking a little fun here.
Yeah, I got it.
I would support wolf management. I think it's the correct thing to do. I think it's the responsible thing to do. And you can't manage every other aspect of an ecosystem and then not manage that.
Sure.
It's just common sense. But again, it's federal, and until it's not, it is what it is. But nonetheless, in our original DAT cycle 2 years ago, our team did craft a wolf management recommendation that we addressed to the DNR and the NRC that basically said this, and I'll just kind of paraphrase that the DAT would strongly encourage the Department of Natural Resources to maintain the readiness of implementation of the wolf management plan immediately upon federal delist. End quote.
It's
And
pretty
that's all
much.
we can ask
I
for.
was gonna say that pretty much sums up what can be done right now. So I was just curious. No, that's that definitely always crosses my mind because I hear a lot of those kinds of comments. Um, Getting back onto the deer advisory portion of the deer advisory team, with this suspension of session, is there any concern for the guys out there like me that um, the recommendations that led up to where you were at prior to sessions being suspended, is any of that work going to be negated, or do you feel that that work was to the finish line regardless of whether or not a meeting session is held?
As far as our one big shot out of the Roman candle, as you know, was the $1 system recommendation. And we did see that to its completion. It was properly formatted and submitted to all relevant parties and agencies.
Okay.
Um, so there will be zero impact to that recommendations, regardless of our temporary suspension.
Okay.
That is still actively being discussed, actively being worked through between the commission and the department.
Okay. Good to hear. Good to hear. Um, are you getting any? Are you getting any signals or any feel for where the NRC's mind is at with this right now?
Uh, yeah, no, obviously I have to be kind of careful, right? I can't divulge
Sure.
state secrets, so to speak, right? And some people that's probably going to irritate them because they're like, "Oh, why does it have to be a secret?" Um, I can tell you this: I do not know. No one has told me, Jordan, this is what's going to happen. Now, don't tell anyone.
Right.
It hasn't gone down like that. Obviously, I've been privy to some high level conversation and some closed door discussion. Um, and I can tell you that I'm very, very pleased with the tone and the direction that these conversations are taking, and that it is becoming more and more and more focused by the day. Um, 3 weeks ago, the shit kind of hit the fan, and I had no idea where we were going to end up. It was like pin the tail on the donkey for a hot minute there, and I'm going, "Oh my god, what is going to happen?" It was crazy. There was all kinds of stuff being discussed. Well, maybe we'll end up with statewide MAPRs. Well, maybe we'll end up with earn a buck or earn a second buck. Or, I mean, everything but the kitchen sink was like dumped out of the bag in the middle of the table, and we're picking through it like Halloween candy. And I'm shaking my head, going, "What are we doing?"
What just happened? Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We were cruising down the highway, vibing with the radio, had a nice cup of coffee in our hand, and somebody yanked the e-brake. The coffee's all over the window, and nobody knows what happened.
Right.
It was awful. It was 3 weeks of hell, to be honest with you, Brad. I was pretty stressed. A lot of my team was stressed. Um, you hear whispers and rumors of things. You don't really know what to believe. And at that point in time, um, there was a concerted effort to be very guarded about what was said
Sure.
with the department, with the commission, and I understand that, rightfully so. They've got their process and their closed door deliberations, and that's fine. That's how it works. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
But when you're in the midst of the storm and then you're going through a comms blackout at the same time, it makes a man nervous.
I can imagine, man. I can imagine when those rumors started coming out. I reached out to several people. I reached out to you. I reached out to Paul. I reached out to some other folks, and all of you respected the process and were like you're like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not going to start, you know, trying to sort through the weeds right now. We got to figure out what's going on before we even talk about what's going on. Otherwise, we're just going to create a shitstorm. So I give you guys credit for saying, hey, we don't really have much to say until we know what exactly is taking place, and then we can kind of figure out from there what's going on. So definitely created a little bit of turbulence. I could only imagine for the folks on the DAT, but for people that were hearing those rumors, we were all like, what is going on? Like, is there a coup going on, or what is taking place?
Oh man, it was insane. And I said this early on in the podcast, and I'll repeat it now. I have never ever seen it this intense and this crazy like it has been this reg cycle. I mean, they have really left no stone unturned. I'll say this. They have been extremely thorough. They have exhaustively examined the options, the potential outcomes of each situation. I mean, even with a single buck reg, they'll say, well, okay, what if we did this? Well, what's the economic impact of that? What's the social impact of that? What's the long-term impact on hunter retention? I mean, they're looking at everything under a microscope, one at a time, tearing it all apart. You know, if you've ever looked at a mechanical drawing, like the exploded
Yeah.
view, that's what they have done with all of this stuff. And even though it's been frustrating because I'm like, why are you looking at that? I don't want you to look at that. Like, nobody wants that. Why are you even looking at that? When this process is over, no matter what comes out the other end, nobody will be able to say they didn't do their due diligence, that they didn't review the data, that they didn't consider the science, they didn't consider the hunter, because they absolutely have, exhaustively so. So I got to give both the commission and the department the utmost respect for their diligence and their detail and their dedication.
Good, good. No, that's good to hear. What's your thoughts? Let me back up before I ask this question because I don't know the answer to it, and I probably should. When was the very first time OBR was brought up as a recommendation? What year was that?
It's funny that you asked me that question. Um, I don't know if it happened earlier than this, because at one point in time we did have the one buck system in the state of Michigan. It was
Right,
a long, long
long
time
time
ago,
ago. Yeah.
and then that was done away with. What I can tell you is this, and you might get a chuckle out of this when I tell you. 30 years ago, it was my father having this exact same conversation.
Okay.
Exactly the same conversation. Late 90s. You know, that's one of the things that's been really special in a way for me, and also tremendously frustrating. Um, Here I am 30 years later having the same conversation that my father was sitting before the commission having. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible. All this time, we've walked in a big circle over a span of 3 decades. Well, no, let's not do that. Let's try this. Well, that didn't work. Let's try this. Let's try that. Let's try this. Let's try that. And we're right back where we started 30 years ago.
Yeah.
That, when you look at it that way, it's concerning, it's demoralizing, right? Like, what are we doing here?
Yep.
Have we learned nothing? But the other side, and I guess that's what gives me optimism. The conversation is different this time because we as hunters aren't the same people that we were 30 years ago. Hunters have changed. There's begun to be a cultural and an ideological shift, and there's a willingness to do whatever it takes to see a healthy, vibrant herd and to ensure a bright future for all those that come after us. And I'm not so sure that that was the case 30 years ago on the level that it is today.
Sure.
And, you know, I'll give you a case in point. Some of the APR guys that were absolute diehards 10 years ago that I butted heads with hard are standing shoulder to shoulder with me today saying, yeah, we need to go to one buck. And hey, I hope they put an APR on it, but I'm going to support $1.
Sure.
And I'm good with it, right? Like we have found this middle ground because so much of hunting culture, I don't care what it is. We can talk about camouflage, we can talk about firearms, we can talk about archery equipment, we can talk about crossbows versus compounds versus traditional. Every aspect of hunting culture is so polarized, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And for a long time in the state of Michigan, we have been our problem when it comes to getting regulatory change because we have been so fractured, so polarized, so divided, and so busy killing each other. The commission and the DNR go, okay, Michigan hunters, tell us what you want. You say you're not happy, tell us what you want. And we tell them 25 things.
Yeah.
And they throw their hands up and go, okay, well, let's just spin the wheel and do something because these guys got no idea what they want.
Sure.
And for the first time in my lifetime, I'm really seeing that polarization soften. And I'm seeing an honesty and a depth to the conversations the guys that have opposing views have never had before. Like we are witnessing, we are living a historic moment in the state of Michigan. We have ringside seats to something that we have never seen before. And it's really special. And I'm tremendously honored to be a part of that and to help shepherd this process. And for me on a personal, emotional level, I inherited my father's war,
Right.
so to speak.
Yep.
It wasn't necessarily intentional. I mean, when I was a young man and my dad was doing all this stuff, I had no aspirations of being on the DAT one day. I mean, it didn't even exist, right? It just happened this way. And it's really special to call up my dad and talk to him about these things, about what's going on, and to hear just the joy and the enthusiasm in my dad's voice. He's like, "Holy smokes, son, I can't believe this.
Right. Yeah.
This is great." And it makes his day because he eventually reached a point, Brad, where he gave everything he had to give. God bless him, and he burned out.
I can
He
imagine.
got he got tired of driving 1,000 miles round trip from our home in Calumet to Lansing, beating his head against a brick wall and listening to the infighting with other sportsmen and couldn't get anything done. And he hung up his cleats. Um, so it's personally special for me to be in this position and to be able to share that with him. And again, on a personal level, to see one buck cross the finish line in the state of Michigan, the first thing I'm going to do is call my dad.
Sure. I can imagine.
I want to share that with him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now to play devil's advocate here, and I hate doing it right after that because that's very powerful to listen to the 30-year process that this has been. But I got to ask the question: if OBR doesn't cross the finish line this cycle, what does that mean for OBR? Does that mean we pick the fight up again next cycle, or is 30 years plus another cycle? Is that just, are we going to have to come to a acknowledgement that no matter how many people or how much this is fought for, is it ever going to happen? So I just want your take on that. If OBR doesn't cross the finish line this cycle, what's the next step?
The next step is we're going to make it like downtown Los Angeles after Kobe just sunk a buzzer beater 3 to win it in Game 7. We're burning cars, we're destroying buildings until they give us what we want.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. Um, no, worst case scenario, and I don't believe that's going to happen, not for 1 second. But I'll go there with you. I mean, I have absolute faith, I really do. But I'll go there. Let's say it doesn't pass, and we end up with status quo, or we end up with some weird hybrid buck reg where they're trying to make everybody happy and not piss anybody off, and it just makes a mess. Um, what then? Well, that would be a heavy, heavy blow. And I'm going to be real honest here. the department and the commission are standing at the threshold of a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I don't think there's ever going to be a second chance, because right now, hunters are engaged in this process on a level that they have never been in my lifetime.
Yep.
It is powerful. And I'm not just saying that like trying to beat the drum and create this false hype. It's real. You know, I talked to a commissioner today that told me that they received over 1,000 emails just this week.
Wow.
This week about Michigan deer management, and that most of it was about one buck, and the vast majority was supportive. So the communication to the commission and to the department is legendary right now. This has never happened. And if you're the NRC and you're the DNR and you see this groundswell of grassroots public support for something that has biological standing, it is suicide
Sure.
politically
Yeah.
not to go down that road. It's
Yep.
scientifically appropriate. The people are clamoring for it, begging you for it.
Yeah, and
Right.
I'll jump in on that, and last time you and I spoke, I had talked about how I had essentially checked out of the conversation, and I was just like, make your freaking regs whatever they're going to be. I don't care. You tell me what I can hunt. That's what I want to hunt. I'm going to check out of the conversation. I'm going to do my very best to insulate myself in my little area to hunt my hunt, right? Within the confines of the law. I'm not advocating breaking the law because you don't like the law. That's not what I'm saying. I was just mentally checking out, and I was just going to do my own thing. I've talked to a lot of folks. One of the blessings that has come from this podcast is I do get to I get people that reach out to me. They private message me. Friends that I know that have hunted for years have really opened up, and we've created a lot of discussion about this. Even friends that I didn't really hunt with, but we knew each other to also be hunters, have reached out to me. And I got to be honest with you, Jordan, and I'm pretty close to right there with them. A lot of them are saying if something does not change this cycle, they're done hunting Michigan. They said, I'll never buy another hunting tag here again. And that's a scary thought. And it's things like that I also think about. Like, I've invested a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of my resources into my own property, and I can only do so much with my property. I don't have thousands of acres to play with. I have a small chunk, and I can do the very best. But if the regulations don't help the deer herd, there's only so much I can do to help the deer herd. And I've had folks come to me as far as saying they'll sell their hunting property. I own property specifically for hunting, and I'm going to sell my property, and I will take that money and I will spend the next 15, 20 years taking $4,000 from that property sale every year, and I'll go hunt someplace that does these things. That's a scary thought, and I don't want to see that happen, because when that happens, the Michigan hunter loses all power that we have for the resource that we love. So,
You know, the stage is set for one of two things, Brad. This is going to be the ultimate comeback story of Michigan history, or it is going to be the beginning of the apocalypse of Michigan deer management. And I don't think there's going to be any in between.
yeah.
It is all one way or all the other. And the level of engagement and buy-in right now, the excitement, the air of expectation amongst Michigan hunters is off the charts. And particularly, I would say, with the 50 and under crowd. And that's very important. If you're the DNR, if you're the NRC, that is your future. That is your entire future. That 50 down to 18 demographic, that is the backbone of the next 30 years.
Yep.
Right. And you got to think long and hard about what you're going to do. Because my personal opinion, if they blow this opportunity with the one buck rule, they will lose any chance they will ever have at getting buy-in and meaningful engagement from that 50 and under demographic ever again. It is over. That's just my opinion. But I don't know how you talk them off that ledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how would you? Like, well, listen, we know this is what everybody wanted. and we agree there's scientific basis for this, but we're just not going to do it, and you guys just need to be okay with that. Just trust us. You can't sell that crap.
No, no, not to the, not to the. Let's take the 35-year-old. Let's take that age. Usually by 35, families have been started. Folks are settled into careers or their jobs, whatever it is that they're doing to make a living. Those are the people that are going to be spending money. Those are the people that are going to be looking, if they don't have inherited land, that are looking to buy land. These things have ramifications for decades to come, because if things continue on a downward spiral and it's not a trickle, it's, I think we're on a very steep slope and we're sliding down it very quickly, and we got to do something to shore that up. Those people aren't going to invest that money. Why spend $5,000 an acre for property in Michigan, or go to the UP where you can buy certain properties really cheap? But why spend that money there if there's no ROI on that, when you could go elsewhere and spend that money?
Well, and I think it's important to look at too. Hunters vote with their wallets. Like, we can do all the hunter satisfaction surveys in the world. I don't care about that. What I'm going to look at is the fact that we have lost a third of our licensed buyers in the last couple decades.
Yep.
That is a massive hemorrhage of hunters. That is a massive level of dissatisfaction. And I'm not, I'm not tone deaf to the fact that we're seeing hunters aging out, right? Like, that's part of that.
Oh yeah.
It's not just all pissed off hunters leaving the state, but there's a big component of that. There's a big component of that. And that tells you right away, there's your litmus test. What we are doing is not successful. The business model that we have in place isn't satisfactory with our customers. That's a problem. And I'll share a tidbit. One of the big hangups with the $1 system, at least through the lens of the DNR, is funding. There's concern that they stand to lose a substantial amount of money in license revenue going to a $1 system. And through their internal processes, whatever else, I mean, they've done the economic calculations, and all their estimates come out that they're going to lose money. How much depends. So that's the concern, because the DNR has gotten real butt whooping from the legislature, especially the House this past year, and they're having financial difficulties. They're trying to seek a license fee increase. There's trouble financially, and they're gritting their teeth and they're going, "Oh my goodness, that another financial hit." And here's how I've kind of responded to that line of dialogue and to that concern and conversation. How much money are you going to lose if you lose buy-in from all the hunters 50 and under for the next 30 years?
Yep. That was where I was going to go with it.
What does that loss look like? Because I don't think there'd be an agency left.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to run it. You couldn't keep the lights on and the doors open. And I'm not coming at this from the angle of, well, you just need to give the people what they want, or else, or we're going to defund you. I've never been in that camp. I've been clear about that from day one, that the science, that the biology trumps all, and you don't placate hunters. You do what's right for the resource.
Yep.
But this is. And for the first time in a long time, I think hunters are locked in agreement with what is best for the resource.
Yeah.
The two are conjoined at this point. And, if I'm the Michigan DNR, I'm willing to take a short-term hit financially for the long-term investment. That's just me.
Yep. I'm with you on that. And I think there's other avenues in which they can look to recoup some of that. I 100% agree. They're going to take a financial hit up front if they go to this system. Just the simple numbers tell you that. But there's other ways that there's other folks that use a lot of our resources that don't have to pay they pay very little to nothing to enjoy those resources. And maybe it's time for them to start looking at those avenues as well. But, yeah, when I look at it,
though,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to say, when I look at it from a business aspect, if if I'm selling something and I'm trying to sell it at a, let's just say I'm trying to sell it at a 20% margin. I want a 20% gross margin on that. And somebody comes back to me and says, I'll buy it, but I want it at a 15% margin. And I'm going to buy it every single year for the next 20 years. I'm taking that deal all day long, because am I going to lose money up front? Yeah, but I'm going to recoup that money over the next 20 years, right? So,
Well, and here's the other part, and I've couched this to the department and the commission both. The department has come forward and said, listen, we've got all these deficits across our different divisions. These are the problems it's causing. We need a license fee increase. And the response from a lot of Michigan outdoorsmen is, I'm not giving you 1 cent until you show me that you're going to manage effectively, scientifically, and do the right thing. I'm not giving you 1 stinking cent. You show me you're going to do what's right, well, then we can have that conversation. And if they take this step and they say, hey, we're going to take a loss here, we know it, but we're willing to put the good of the resource first, and we're not the people you think we are. Because that's the other public sentiment about the DNR, right? Is
sure.
that they're all about the revenue. They don't give a damn about the deer. They just want to sell licenses. If the DNR steps forward on this and says, we're willing to take the hit because we believe in this biologically and otherwise, and we're placing the resource first, boy, that flips the narrative on its head.
Yeah.
And that would encourage, I think, so many Michigan sportsmen to go, oh, boy, the Michigan DNR is really getting down to business. They're getting serious about deer management. Like this is good.
Yeah.
We're going a positive direction here. And I'll tell you what, somebody who feels positively about the direction of deer management, they're going to go out in the woods and they're already in a positive frame of mind before they even get to the woods.
Mm-hmm.
There's expectation, there's joy, there's happiness. And a person who is happy spends money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a guy I already spend more money than anyone should spend when it comes to my hunting, whether it be here in Michigan or other states. I have no problem paying a premium for something that I believe in. I don't know. I don't know what the DNR is going to do about that revenue loss. Just real quick, throwing ideas out there. Have you heard any discussions? Have they talked about maybe? I mean, this would be creating a lot of drastic change, which can also cause issues, but go to a hunting license like some states have, where you pay X amount for a hunting license and then you pay X amount for your permit. So your hunting license is, say, $65, and then you pay $25 for your actual tag. Like our base license, increase the cost of the base license.
I'm not really privy to all the puzzle pieces that they've tried to shift into different positions behind closed doors. That's kind of above my pay grade.
Sure.
Um, I do think that there is some hesitation on behalf of the DNR to institute new fees at a time in which public sentiment is poor and legislative sentiment is poor. I don't think they want to be perceived as trying to screw the hunter out of another dollar.
Sure.
And creating more fees. It's the Michigan hunter doesn't want another cell phone bill, right? Well, a service charge. What the hell is a service charge for? What?
Yeah.
I think the department is sensitive to that, and they're trying not to come up with bullshit fees.
Yep.
They want to do it right. They really do. And I've told them point blank, this is your shot. Like on the other side of this one buff thing, you're either going to be a hero or you're going to be a villain.
Yeah.
And there's really not going to be anything in between. That the public sentiment is going to swing drastically one way or the other. The stakes are high.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never seen a situation in my 31 years of hunting where there was a more pivotal moment um, with regulations in the state of Michigan. So, yeah.
I think financially too, another thing to consider is that when we do the right thing and we institute management policies that are going to benefit our herd, that are going to create better herd health, that are also going to eventually put, let's just talk about it, bigger, better bucks on the landscape. That's part,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a byproduct of a healthy herd is bigger, better bucks. When you do that, maybe there's some guys that say, man, I got some freaking giants on camera at home this year. Like, I don't know if I'm going to go to Ohio this year because I got a 150 on my property.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy cow. You're going to repatriate hunter dollars that you've lost.
Yeah.
What does that stat column look like? Well, I don't know, but I know that there's a lot of hunters that have taken to hunting other states. And if we can repatriate those people by putting a quality product on the table and bringing them home to hunt, I think it's going to pay off.
Yeah. I think that's a very lucid point to have right there. In the public sentiment from the conversations you have, not so much from the DAT, from the DNR, from the biologists, from the NRC side of things. I know early on in the OBR conversation, there was some. I don't want to say much because you're always going to have people that don't agree with it, and that's their right to disagree with it. I think the overwhelming majority of folks that I speak with are either neutral, where they're like, if they do it, it's not that big of a deal, or they're in favor of it. And then there's some that are just on the other side of neutral that are like, I think I like the idea. I just don't know if it's the right thing to do. Have you seen that shift, and have you seen the public sentiment shift more from the one argument that the people that are the naysayers to it are is you guys just want bigger bucks. You just want to see bigger bucks. That's all you're caring about. Have you seen that shift from the beginning of this conversation to where we're at now, where people are actually looking at it and saying they're laying out a really good case for this is a byproduct, not the justification for why we're doing this, and there's actually a benefit to the herd health overall in doing this. Have you seen that shift at all?
I have. I would say that from the onset, there was a percentage of people who they were on board from Jump Street, right? They're like, dear God, yes, give us one buck tag. I've been waiting for this for 20 years. Like there was that percentage. And then on the polar opposite end of that, there was an equal percentage that were like, oh my God, no, no, hell no, we don't want that. We want whatever mandatory antler point restrictions across the whole state, nothing but that period. Don't even want to discuss another buck rate. But the biggest portion of the pool, I think, kind of sat cautiously in the middle and they've listened and they've read and they've watched and they've asked questions and they've just kind of like I guess in Facebook terms, right? Like they're lurking in the thread and they're reading.
Sure.
They may not be commenting, right? They're just watching other guys duke it out and whatever, but they're absorbing bits and pieces from all over on social media, or they're listening to podcasts and they're going, oh wow, that was a really good point. I like what he had to say about that. Or maybe it went the other way and they're like, nah, this guy's an idiot. What is he talking about? That's crap. I don't buy this. But I think as time has gone on, that middle has continued to shrink faster and faster and faster. And I don't want to really couch it this way, but people are picking sides.
Yeah.
They're making up their mind. And it's getting down to the point where I would say 95% of people at this point know what they want.
Yeah.
And maybe their justifications are different than the other guy. Maybe there is a guy supporting one buck because, well, yeah, I will only want to hunt mature 4.5-year-old animals, and if we get one buck, I'm going to have 4.5-year-old animals. Maybe that's his justification, and that's why he supports one buck. Maybe the next guy says, well, I think this is just a great building block for herd health, and it's going to do good things broad spectrum, and I want a healthier herd, and this is a step in the right direction, so that's why I support it. People's reasoning, their rationale might be different, but the support has continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. And I would say, like, if I had to split the pie just off the cuff, and I haven't done any polling, right? So whoever comes to the comment section on this podcast, like, well, gee, Jordan, did you do an official DNR survey of the state of Michigan? No, I didn't. Um, this is Jordan Hoover's off the cuff opinion. Take it for whatever it's worth. And if it's worth nothing to you, that's fine. Um, all the people that I talk to in the public, um, all the stuff that I read online, I would say we're probably sitting 75 to 80% support for $1 in some form. Now, there's some guys that'll say, well, I don't want $1 unrestricted. I want $1 with an API. But I'm lumping those guys together, right? Because at the end of the day, they're all willing to say, well, as long as we get some form of $1, we can live with that. The driver is $1. And that percentage of people is very large based on what I'm seeing right now. Now there's a very devout small percentage of guys that are adamantly against it. And I'll just be truthful with you. I have not heard an articulate, well stated, data driven argument against $1.
No.
I hear a lot of feelings,
Yep.
and that's fine. I don't want to invalidate anybody's feelings. You're entitled to feel however you want to feel. But when we're having a discussion about biological matters, your feelings are kind of in the backseat. And I think that the guys that are most vocal in opposition have emotionally driven reasons for it.
Sure. No, I would agree with that. You know, I'm known to put out a weekly wild take on my Facebook page for Wild Spirits Outdoors, and a lot of that stuff is rather polarizing. I understand that, and people can say I do it for clicks or whatever. I don't do it for clicks. I really don't care about the clicks. I do it because I really want it to hit somebody in the face when they read it, and oftentimes you get one or the other. You get somebody who's like "f yeah," or you get somebody who's like "f you," right? And it's because they don't even make it through the first sentence, because I usually put something very hard hitting in that first sentence, and that just triggers the emotion, and they're not even comprehending what they're reading until they get to the end, and they're already mad. And I don't do that to get people to flip out and lose. I really want people, when they get mad, to take a deep breath, sit back, read it again, and try to see where I'm coming from, because I'm trying to put perspectives in there. And I do it on things that a lot of guys aren't in support of, like baiting, for example. We've talked about this. I'm pro baiting. Some guys will come at me with emotional attacks. Some people will say, well, you're just a shitty hunter, that's why you want baiting. And I'm like, no, okay. But and then there's people who come at me with good logical reasons why they don't support baiting, and I can completely respect those positions. And some of them are actually quite compelling to certain cases. So yeah, there's a lot of emotion in it, and emotion you can't discount, like you said. And it's good that we're emotional about it, because that means that we have a vested group of people that do care.
Yes.
So I'm happy to see that. Um, is there anything, I don't want to say holes, that's not the right word, but is there anything in the OBR discussions that are going forward right now that people that are against the OBR might be trying to exploit? And is there any advice from you as an advocate for an OBR of how people, I don't want to say like teach people what to say, but is there anything you see that people are trying to nitpick at to discount the OBR, and what is your response to that particular claim?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of consistent complaints, I'll say. Um, and the first one is OBR is just a trophy hunter agenda, and it is a minority of elitist snob hunters that just want to jam their values down everybody else's growth. Um, that's talking point number one. So I want to go into that exploded view. From the first moment that our team started having these conversations, our objective was biologically driven. We were told point blank by Chad Stewart, like, whatever comes out the other end of this team on a yearly basis has to be grounded in scientific evidence and defensible with data. That's what we do here. We're about science. And I'll listen to your opinions and I'll respect your opinions. But at the end, we've got to be able to defend the recommendation because it's going to go before the commission. They're going to pick it all apart and they're going to say, what's your justification? What's your rationale? Got to be able to make your case, right? Um, so that being said, right from the onset, when we started down the road with buck rigs, that was at the forefront of our minds, our biological charge. And the big buck thing, I think, is low hanging fruit because that was never forefront of anybody's mind. And if it was, they certainly never gave voice to it in my presence. Everybody's heart and soul is poured into making the entire herd better, not just improving buck hunting. Because you can't have bigger, better bucks if your herd is unhealthy.
Right.
You can't.
Yeah.
The two are mutually exclusive. So from that vantage point, you talk about the 1 buck recommendation, making the combo tag 1 buck, 1 doe. Why? Well, when Jordan Hoover looks at herd health metrics, there's 3 primary things I look at. Number 1, buck to doe ratio. Is it in balance? Number 2, diversity of age structure. Number 3, is the herd within carrying capacity of the land? Those for me are the big 3. And most any place you go in the state of Michigan, not all, but most, that's a failing grade in all 3 categories.
Yeah.
Well, how do you begin to fix that? Well, the answer is in much of the state, we should be taking more does. And again, regionally appropriate, like we discussed earlier. I'm not going to get in the weeds on that. But broad brush, we should be taking more does. 80% of Michigan hunters last year did not shoot a doe at all. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to need to increase your antlerless harvest if you can. Number 2, you're going to need to back off the buck harvest. Because what's the fastest way to tighten the sex ratio? Well, you work from both ends. You kill less bucks, you kill more does, you meet in the middle sooner, right? You can't put overemphasis on one or the other. You work conservatively on both at the same time and you reach your destination sooner.
Yep.
And in a more healthy way. So when you go to a 1 buck combo system, your hunter goes into the field with 1 buck tag and 1 doe tag already in their pocket. And some people say, well, I don't care. I don't want to shoot a doe. Why are you making me buy a doe tag? I don't want. So I'll tell you a quick anecdote on that. Years ago, when they made the base license mandatory, do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was one of those guys that was pissed. Like, wait a minute. You can't make me buy this. I don't want this product. Like, I'm a deer junkie. I don't really have time to go hunt squirrels. Like, that's not what I'm about. I got nothing against it, but it's just not how I want to spend my time. Now you're telling me I have to pay for that product or I can't get a deer tag? That's BS. I was so pissed. But here's what happened. I got 4 sons at home. And eventually they're like, hey, Dad, we take a squirrel hunting? Yeah, well, yeah, sure. Grab the 22s. I mean, I got a base license. I already paid for it. Yeah, let's go. I ended up doing those things and doing them more than I ever had before. And my attitude was, well, I already paid for it. May as well use it.
Sure.
Get my money worth.
Yep.
And I believe the same psychology will apply when you send hunters to the field with a designated antlerless tag in their pocket from day one. Initially, there's going to be some, oh, I can't believe this. They're making me buy an antlerless tag. Oh, it's terrible. Somewhere along the line, there's going to be a freezer queen standing in front of them, and they're going to go, well, I already paid for it.
Yep.
And I sure love venison.
Yep.
Whack.
Yep. And that's something Paul got me on this, and After I recorded with him, I got to thinking, and I was like, you sneaky guy, because when I looked at it, I'm like, because I didn't realize the OBR was tied into a combo still. I thought it was going to be an OBR, like you buy one buck tag and then you can buy doe tag or 10 doe tags, however that works. And he's like, no, you got to buy, it'll be a combo tag, one buck, one doe. And I was like, I don't like that. Like, but then where he got me, and Paul, if you're listening, I'm not picking on you for this. It was the way you word played it was very good, because you actually got me to side with you on that, and I still agree in premise to what you said. If somebody only wants to shoot one deer and that's all they want to shoot, they shouldn't have to buy 2 tags, was his premise, and I agree with that to an extent. But his argument was keep the combo tag the way it is, but if you go to a 1 buck, get rid of the combo tag. And I said, well, like, why? And he's like, well, if they only want to shoot a buck and they don't want to shoot a doe, they shouldn't have to buy a doe tag. And I'm like, and he's like, and some people only have time to go out a couple times, so they're only going to shoot 1 deer anyway. And I'm like, okay. And I agreed with him all through this. And then afterwards, I'm thinking about, like, wait a minute. You're telling me that the average everyday Joe that can only go hunting a couple times has no problem buying a combo tag for a chance to shoot 2 bucks. But the second you give him a combo tag that's only 1 buck and 1 doe, suddenly now you're screwing him. And I was like, you got me on that one, Paul, because no. In premise, I agree with what he's saying, but the argument that he made for it tripped me up and got me to agree with it under a different pretense, if that makes sense. You're telling me that the everyday guy who only gets to hunt a couple times can go buy a combo tag, and that's fine if it's 2 bucks. But if it's 1 buck, 1 doe, now it's a problem. So, yeah.
Right. So incentivizing antlerless harvest through that tag structure is important, because we want to see people closer to a 1-to-1 harvest ratio in most of the state. You know, obviously in the extreme northern tier of the UP, we got to be a little more sensitive. But for most of the state, I mean, if we could get to a 1-to-1 harvest ratio, that would be incredible. And you look at a lot of the states that are flourishing and have robust, healthy deer herd, and they're close to that number, or they're even shooting
more does, yeah,
than they are bucks.
Yeah.
So clearly, we have work to do with antlerless, and that's our way of trying to incentivize that through that structure. But you know, to be clear, we're not able legislatively, as I understand it, to suspend the issuance of the single tag. So that single tag will remain in some capacity. And there's been a lot of discussion around how that's going to be handled. You know, one of the things that was proposed was, well, let's keep the single tag available, but let's slap a 4-point APR on it. But if you buy the combo tag, maybe the buck tag's unrestricted on the combo. So plus minus, pick your poison. I don't know how they're going to go. You know, there's been a lot of playing with the puzzle pieces there, and they're experimenting with different things and trying to figure out how they want to do that. But ultimately, the single tag will continue to be available in some form.
Okay.
So people will still have the option to say, I don't want 2 deer and I'm not buying a combo tag. You'll still have that option.
Okay.
And, you know, I would also point out for people too, because this is an often overlooked fact, you don't have to buy a single tag or a combo license to be able to shoot 1 deer.
Yeah.
You buy your base license and you can buy an over-the-counter doe tag and you can go smoke a doe. There's your 1 deer. You can still do that regardless of license structure in the vast majority of the state of Michigan. So the people that truly just want 1 deer have multiple vectors to get there.
Yep.
But getting back to the biological, right? Like we talked about the need to harvest more doe, to lay off the bucks, to attain that sex ratio balance. That's important. Obviously, if we're killing fewer bucks, we're going to see bucks get older. And the vast majority of Michigan bucks are not seeing their 3rd birthday right now. That's a problem. So we're going to see diversity in age structure as more bucks survive, and that's going to compound year after year after year. It's going to get better and better. Now, I'm not saying it's going to explode. It's going to take 3 to 5 years before people are like, oh, we're really starting to turn a corner here. I'm seeing some nice deer. It's going to take a little time.
Yep.
It's a long-term investment strategy. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme, but that will turn the corner for us on age structure as well. And if the commission decides to slap an APR on it, that will turn the corner even faster. So it depends how aggressive they get, how quickly that age structure corner begins to turn. But that was the second data point. The first one was sex ratios. The second one was age structure. And the third one was carrying capacity. We got to reduce doe densities. And I talked about that. The closer we can get to a 1-to-1 harvest ratio, that's good. Normalize people taking a doe. It's okay.
Yeah.
In fact, it's encouraged.
Yeah.
And they taste wonderful.
Yeah. 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 I talked to Paul about this coming season. I'm optimistic that I will take my first doe off my property that I've owned since 2017, 2018, I think. I haven't had does out there, and I've got a couple neighbors that are definitely whack 'em, stack 'em folks, and they've toned that down a bit. And I've got another neighbor who has acquired more permission or more sole permission to some properties, and he toned it down. And we're optimistic this year based on what we're seeing. That I love shooting does, man. I used to whack them and stack them when I had the opportunities to do it, but when I hunt my own property, I just haven't had an opportunity to do so. But it's looking good this year, so I'm excited to put a freezer queen and a big old fat nanny in the freezers. So
And people will ask too, they're like, Jordan, why do you think going to a $1 system like this and slamming a doe tag in people's pocket is going to make them shoot a doe? Even if they buy it, what makes you think they're going to do that? Well, when you look at the hunter harvest survey data and you dive down, you find out people want something like 1.4 deer a year on average. Well, you can't shoot 0.4 deer. So for conversation's sake, we're going to say 2 deer. Well, if only one of them can be a buck,
kind of
what's the other one going to be?
kind of brings it down, right? Yeah.
Right. And that's not speculative. That's a fact. You
Yep.
can legally only take 1 buck. What's the second one going to be? It's going to be a doe. Now, is that going to be an overwhelming percentage? Are we going to see a huge jump in antlerless harvest? No, but it's going to help. It's again, it's an incremental step in a positive direction. It's not a miracle fix.
Yep.
So that kind of wraps up some of the biology. But as far as again, referencing the argument of trophy hunter, whatever, I think I've done a pretty good job painting the picture of the biological reasons that we were looking at. But the other thing I want to focus on here for just a second is the psychological aspect. Because really, the DNR and the NRC can write whatever regulations they want, but ultimately it's the man or woman behind the bow or behind the gun that is going to make the harvest choices. And we've had what I'll call a culture problem with hunting in the state of Michigan for a long time. And I think that 1 buck begins to cause people to be more introspective and more judicious about their harvest circumstances. You know, let's say it's October 5th and you're up in your tree stand. It's a beautiful fall day. You hear a stick snap, you look over, here's this basket 6-pointer. Are you shooting that deer? Maybe somebody does. And if they do, hey, power to you, brother. I'm happy for you. Congratulations, beautiful deer. But I think most guys in that moment are probably going to go, it's early.
Yeah.
I'm going to let him go. And let's fast forward the tape. Let's say it's rifle season. You're not a bow hunter at all. You're a dedicated rifle hunter. That's all you do. You gun hunt. It's November 15th. It's 8:30 a.m. Crunch, 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 crunch. You look, here's the 6-pointer. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
8:30 in the morning, opening day. Are you going to shoot that deer? Maybe somebody does. And if you do, hey, I'm happy for you, brother. But a lot of guys, I think, are going to look down the rifle and go, nah, not yet.
Not
it's
yet.
early. And when we normalize restraint and people realize they don't have to pull the trigger as soon as something with antlers is in front of them, I think we're really going to fly in the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that because selfishly I want bigger bucks. I want everyone to have a better experience in the woods, whatever that looks like to you. Um, and let's just be honest. Let's put some cards on the table here. Let's address the elephant in the room. Nobody anywhere in the state of Michigan gets out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning with joy in their heart, thinking, I got to hurry up and get to my stand because that spike horn's going to be there.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks that. Don't feed me that crap.
Yeah.
You know, we all love big, beautiful, majestic Northwoods whitetail bucks.
Yep.
Barrel chested, Coke bottle bases, Roman noses. Man, we love them. It's the stuff we lay awake at night dreaming about, that one day we're going to have that opportunity at an animal of a lifetime in our sights. We all dream about that. And you know, I'll put the trophy hunter thing to bed real fast right now. 80% of Michigan hunters last year didn't shoot a doe. So I'm going to ask you, people listening to this podcast, did you shoot a doe last year? Because if you didn't, you're a trophy hunter by definition.
Yeah.
I don't care if you shot a spike horn. I don't care if you shot a Boone and Crockett buck. If you didn't shoot a doe, weren't you trophy hunting? Why didn't you shoot a doe?
Yeah.
Especially in lower Michigan, where you can buy 10 over-the-counter tags. You got crop damage problems. You got all the opportunity. You got early seasons, special seasons, late seasons, extended seasons, but you didn't shoot a doe, but you're not a trophy hunter. So I think we need to be careful how we throw around that accusation and try to defame one another, because to some extent, the honest to God's truth is every guy that walks into the woods is hunting for the buck of a lifetime. All of us. And there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't be what drives us. And that's the difference. It's the heart of stewardship and care and compassion for the land and all of its critters and the future thereof. And if that's what's in your heart when you go to the woods and when you talk deer regs, I don't care if you get excited about big bucks. I don't care if you get excited about a spike horn. I'm glad you're there.
Yeah.
So, you know, that for me ends the whole trophy hunter argument right there. Slams the door on it. So point number 2, the other most often heard argument of why we shouldn't do one buck. But my liberty.
Yeah.
You're taking away my rights. You're giving away our rights to the government. What a pile of crap. Whoever told you that it is your right to shoot 2 bucks? How did we arrive to that it is your right? No, it's your right to be a steward of the woods and waters. That is what is your right. There is nothing that I have seen anywhere that substantiates biologically that there is a benefit occurring to the deer herd in Michigan continuing to kill 2 bucks, especially two younger bucks. You can't make that argument. And
Yeah.
if somebody can, I'd love to hear it. Truly, I would, because I haven't heard it.
Yep.
You know, it's not about liberty or tyranny. It's simply about doing right by the deer. And these guys that talk about my rights, you're wrong. And I'll say it, you're selfish. Because you're putting you first. You're not putting the deer first, you're putting you first. You're saying, hey, I want this, and how dare you take it from me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if we shouldn't do that? You know, I'll use the UP for an example. I'll pick on my home region, right? We've had a monster winter up here this year, and there's a lot of folks that are worried about the winter kill, what the deer herd's going to look like this coming year. I go, oh my gosh, Jordan, you know, maybe we shouldn't shoot any does up here this next year because this is going to be bad, brother. And I said, well, how you feel about not shooting 2 bucks then? Oh, yeah, it's always been this way. I mean, we've always shot 2 bucks, no matter what the winter did. And I said, what if I told you we shouldn't have been doing that? Because if we don't have enough deer that we can shoot any does at all, I can very reasonably make the argument we sure as hell shouldn't be shooting 2 bucks if we can't shoot one doe.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a talking point going around up here that Some folks in the high snowfall zone claim we have 2 deer per square mile. So I've laid it on them like this. I said, you're going to look me in the face and you're going to call yourself a conservationist and a steward telling me we have 2 deer per square mile, but hey, if they both have antlers, I'm going to kill them both. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's complete intellectual dishonesty. So, it just doesn't hold any water when people want to wave the red, white, and blue and hide behind liberty. That's garbage.
Yeah.
We got to put the deer first, not ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, what you said about the UP it's a perfect explanation. I look at it for like the same for areas that get smoked by EHD. You'll see, like last year, there was a lot of Facebook posts of people in certain regions of Michigan, like, man, EHD is bad. Okay. Are you going to go hunt? Well, yeah. You're telling me your whole deer herd just got smoked by EHD, but you're still going to go out and hunt that same deer herd. Like, that's not stewardship. If it was really, I'm not saying they didn't have a means or enough deer to go hunt them, but if you're saying your deer herd was just wiped out by EHD, why would you go kill one of the few remaining deer? It's the same mentality as what you're saying in the UP. Like, so, yeah, I get it. And that whole,
Those are the. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that whole treading on my rights thing really, really touches a sore spot with me because I am a diehard. I bleed red, white, and blue, and I believe we have a lot of God-given rights, but those rights come with responsibility. I have a right to own a gun, but I don't have a right to go around waving my gun around as I'm driving through town. Even if I'm not shooting at people, I don't have a right to do that because I have a right to have a gun on me. There's responsibilities that come with every single right we have. And when it comes to a finite resource that we all share, these things are finite, like they could all go away, then we have tremendous responsibility to steward that said resource. So,
And just a funny story I'll tell you too. I was talking with a fella. He was from the Northwest 12. Really, really zealous supporter of APRs. Loves what they've done for him up there in the Northwest 12. Can't say enough good. He goes, dude, we're living in the new mecca of deer up here. Like, leave it alone. I don't want your $1 crap. And it was the same thing. What are you doing? You're giving away our rights to the government. You're taking away my rights to that second tag. Like, what are you doing, man? What's wrong with you, Hoove? I said, well, wait a minute, brother. You're going to accuse me of taking away your rights if you can't kill a second buck. What if I told you you're taking away my rights with your mandatory antler point restrictions? What about my right to shoot a spike horn or a 4-pointer if I want to? What about my personal liberty? Maybe you're tyrannical. Oh, guy's head was going to explode. I'm like, see what a slippery slope that is, man?
yeah. Yep. Um, what, so we've got the NRC meeting, the big one, the crescendo. April 8th is coming up, and you and I were talking back and forth messaging wise, and I really had all intentions of being there, and I talked to you and I said, man, it's not looking good, and I can assure you I will not be able to attend that in person. I have still been emailing the NRC. I've been very vocal about my support for OBR. For folks that cannot attend the April 8th meeting, just there's no way they can do it. What can they be doing right now to help push this to the finish line?
Sure. So, as I said, I had a conversation with a commissioner actually just today, and he shared with me that they had gotten over 1,000 emails just this week alone. And one of the interesting things that this commissioner said to me towards the end of the conversation, he says, I don't want to sound like it's a bad thing, because it's not. He said, I have never seen this much public engagement before. He said, this is fantastic to see so many people in the state of Michigan that are engaging in the process. He said, send more email. The commissioner literally called it out. He says, we want to hear from more people. If we got more phone calls and more emails, it wouldn't be a bad thing. So that is something that people who cannot attend the commission meeting can continue to do. And there's some guys out there like, they don't read any of this stuff. They're reading them. They are reading them. They're staying up late. They're getting a case of the red eye and they're reading them. Now, obviously, if somebody writes a senior thesis, they might skim it, right?
Sure.
You've got to kind of be succinct about what you're saying, be respectful about what you're saying, or it's not going to get read. I assure you of that. But within reason, they are reading through these emails. And you can send whatever correspondence you want to NRC at Michigan.gov. That's capital NRC. And then at Michigan.gov is lowercase. And that email goes to Brooke Parmalee, and she is kind of the administrative liaison between the department and the commission. And she gets all that correspondence directly to the commissioners, goes into their inboxes, and they will see it personally. So you can do that. Also, you can go on the Michigan DNR website, and there's a tab about us. You click that, and it will then create a drop-down menu, and you will see boards and committees. You'll click that. And then under boards and committees, you will see Natural Resources Commission. And if you click that, it will again create another drop-down menu. And there is commissioner names and contact information with personal email addresses. Some of them have phone numbers published, public phone numbers. You can call these people as well. And some commissioners are more quick to respond than others, but you got to understand some of them might be retired, some of them might be working full time, but they are getting the message, and I am hearing that they are calling people back. And I'll spotlight one in particular. Commissioner John Walters out of Indian River has been an absolute rock star from everything I have heard from everybody. He is returning I don't even know how the man does anything else but return phone calls about deer right now. He is talking to a lot of people all around the state of Michigan. So my hat's off to him for absolutely busting his ass and engaging the public on a level I've never seen. Two things you can do. You can call, you can email. Obviously, we would love to see as many people as humanly possible. And I think that based on what I'm seeing, we could shatter the attendance record for a commission meeting in April.
That's awesome.
They are already having conversations about seeking a bigger venue within the Lansing Community College, like another area of the college, because they're worried about being over capacity.
Good.
I would strongly encourage that. And I know it's expensive. Fuel prices are up right now, and it's a big ask, right? Because the commission meeting is on a Wednesday, right smack in the middle of the work week. You got to burn some PTO. It's inconvenient. I get it, but you know what? We're staring down the barrel at a historic moment in Michigan deer management history. And you're going to want to be able to say on the other side of this, I was there. I was there on the day this happened. I was in that room. I testified, I spoke, or I was there and I supported everyone else. And you're going to want to be able to tell that story to your nephews, to your children, maybe one day to your grandchildren. You were there when Michigan turned the corner. That'll be something special.
Yeah.
I have big expectations of this meeting. I really do. And I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to have that lofty optimism based on the things that I am hearing and seeing from the commission, from the department, and from the public. This is building into something truly special that I've never seen before.
Good.
And I believe that the powers that be are going to do the right thing. They're going to make the right decision for the deer herd, for the people, and for the future of both across the state of Michigan. And I'm really, really encouraged by that, because let's be honest, there's been some dark years.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's been a lot of apathy amongst hunter ranks, a lot of, like you gave voice to earlier, man. And you said it best. You said, I just checked out, man. Like, just tell me what the regs are, whatever. I'm gonna go to my tree, I'm a hunt, I don't care. There are a lot of people and I would say tens of thousands of people across the state of Michigan right now that are engaged on a level they never have been before. That is special. We need to nurture that flame, and we need to sustain that momentum. It's very important. We are literally rekindling the spirit of stewardship and conservationists in the state of Michigan right now. This is so much bigger than a buck regulation. It isn't funny.
That's powerful. You're really you're giving me fear of missing out. I really, man, I've had this planned. I had the PTO put in. I was there, and then we had some significant stuff happen at work, and I was basically told you're not going to be anywhere but at this meeting for work, and really bummed me out. But I will definitely be there in spirit. I was going to, and while I got you, I'll just ask you. I thought about putting together like a 3-minute video and sending that to the NRC. I don't even know if I can attach a video. I don't know if you know if you can, but I know I can't speak at the meeting. If there was a way where I could sign up and give my time to somebody else to speak on my behalf or to carry on their conversation, if you know of a way I can do that, please let me know, because I want to be there by proxy in some manner for sure.
Well, I don't know about the video. And it's interesting you said that, because I had another gentleman ask me that exact same question this very week. He wanted to do a short, like you said, a 3-minute public comment video and send it in. And I've never heard of that being done. I'm not going to say it can't be done. In fact, I'll give you this, Brad. If you make a video, you get it to me, and I will make sure in some way, shape, or form it gets to the commissioners. I'll
Okay.
figure it out.
Okay.
I want to make sure that you have that opportunity. I know how passionate you are about this, and I don't want you to miss that.
Cool.
But you can, if you're capable, slap an earbud in, maybe one earbud, on the down low. And the commission meetings are live streamed.
Yeah, I can listen in. Yeah.
Yep. So people will be able to hear it. I mean, expect a long day. It's going to be probably a 9-10 hour meeting that day. It's going to be a barn burner. Yeah, that's where people can direct their attention right now, is emails and phone calls. Just keep the positive conversation going. And understand that as you're engaging people on social media too, and we're having these discussions and debates sometimes, um, you're not going to convince everybody, right? There's some people that you're just not going to win them over. They
Sure.
don't believe in one buck for whatever the reasons are, whether they're emotional or logical, it doesn't matter. That's their stance, and that's okay. People have the right to their opinions. They don't have to agree with us. Even if it's in some cases baseless, that's still their right to hold that opinion.
Yeah.
And we got to be careful not to get too hateful or disparaging in our comments of other people, because at the end of the day, we should all still be on the same team as hunters, right?
Yeah. Yep.
We should all want the same things, and there's going to be disagreement about how we get there from time to time, but I don't want to cast people out of our brotherhood for having a different opinion either.
Yep. And that's
something to keep in mind as we engage on social media, because as you know, social media can turn into a dumpster fire real quick.
It can. Yeah. And that's something I can work on myself. I definitely get passionate about stuff. I try to be very respectful in my conversations, but sometimes it can be tough. So I guess my advice to folks that do engage and I'm not telling people don't engage via social media. We talked about this last time you and I were on. It is today's soapbox. So by all means, I encourage, whether you're for anything or against anything, to engage. Do so respectfully. And if you find yourself in a conversation that is just not going anywhere, just check out of the conversation. You're not going to change a mind if it's going down that road. Just respectfully check out of that conversation. So a couple more things for you real quick, Jordan. This one's a big one that I've been thinking about too. We're in an election year. We've got a gubernatorial election going on this year. What kind of impact do you see that having on the NRC as it stands in the future of deer regulations? I know that's a very broad question because that can go a lot of different directions, but immediate impact on the NRC and your thoughts on long term for the future deer regs.
Oh man, that could be a podcast in and of itself. We'll try to keep that succinct though. We already did our 5-hour marathon. We try not to kill people with this. So just kidding. Grab a Gatorade and sit down. We're not finished.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
Oh, you hear it often said, right? Keep your politics out of natural resources. Politics have no place in natural resources. And ideologically, I'm in that camp. 100%. Deer aren't red. Deer aren't blue. They're brown, for God's sakes. I can totally get behind that stance. However, in practice, that is not how it works. You know, the DNR director is politically appointed. The 7 seats on the commission are politically appointed. And elections have consequences, and they directly influence who is in those chairs. And the politics do filter down in the decision making. There's no doubt about it. You cannot escape that truth. And you know, I'm never going to be a guy that tells you need to vote Democrat, or tells you need to vote Republican, or tells you should vote for the Libertarian or the Independent or the Communist or whatever it is. Certainly not the Communist.
I'll tell folks that don't vote for the communists.
That being said, here's what I am going to say. I don't care how you vote, but please, for the love of God, vote.
Yeah.
Men and women in uniform have paid the ultimate price since the beginning of time in this country, so that you have the right, so that you have a voice to cast your ballot and to make your wishes known. And if you're not doing that, you're doing a disservice to every sacrifice that was ever laid on the altar of liberty on your behalf. I don't care how you vote, but please vote.
Yep.
And you know, I'll take that one step further. Not just when the presidency is on the ballot. Vote in your midterms. Vote in your generals. Vote in your local elections.
That's where it's got to start. That's where it's got to start.
I saw a great meme on Facebook the other day. I laughed until my ribs hurt. It had you ever see the movie Jaws?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it had the town mayor. You remember that guy? Kind of the silver haired.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep the beaches open no matter what.
Yeah.
Had a picture of the mayor from Jaws. And kind of the way the meme read was, the mayor in Jaws 1 was also still the mayor in Jaws 2. This is why it's important to vote in local elections.
I love that, man. I have not seen that one. That would get me cracking up for sure.
I'm like, oh man, that is fantastic. But to get back on point after the moment of levity, elections have consequences, no doubt. And just like not showing up to a Natural Resources Commission meeting, or not sending the email, or not making the phone call ensures that you're not heard and thereby not represented, it is the same thing with state politics, national politics. If you're not voting, if you're not using your voice, if you're not communicating your wishes, your ethos, your values through the ballot box, you're being spoken for. Silence is consent, period.
Yep.
It's important to be engaged. And again, I would challenge people that being politically active is also a portion of stewardship. It really is.
Yep.
Because as I said, whoever gets elected directly influences these offices that then govern your resources and the decisions made over them. It is vital.
Yeah.
So we need to elect people that have our way of life at heart, the future of our resources at heart, and elected officials that are going to serve the people and not themselves. It's absolutely vital. So what does it look like to me? Political landscape. I think there's a good probability we could end up with a Republican governor. I really do. I'm not taking a side. I'm just saying I think that's all signs are pointing that way. I think Michigan's been through a lot with COVID and infrastructure problems and a failing education system and a housing crisis, and prices at the pump are up. There's energy issues. You've got looming concerns about solar, about wind turbines, about data centers, all this stuff. Man, we got some issues. And if there's one thing I know historically, the pendulum tends to swing drastically one way, and then sooner or later it swings drastically back the other way.
Yeah.
People spend 8 years cussing the Republicans, and then they spend 8 years cussing the Democrats, and then they spend 8 years cussing the Republicans, and we just keep doing it.
Yep.
And my assessment of kind of the political ebb and flow right now is there's a good likelihood we end up with a Republican governor this next election cycle. It'll be really interesting to see what happens there, how the seats turn over in the House and the Senate. And of course, that determines some of your subcommittees as well. Like, a lot of people aren't aware, in the state Senate and in the House of Representatives, there is in each a natural resources subcommittee of legislators that are dedicated to hearing and dealing with and evaluating natural resources issues. And some of that's maybe Parks and Rec, some of that might be deer, some of that might be wolves. Prime example right now, you got the debating bill in the House.
Yeah.
So the legislators are engaging on these issues. And again, elections have consequences. The kind of representation you put in there determines the outcomes. And while we're on that, let's hit that real quick. I, for one, I'm a little concerned when I see the legislators start dipping their toe in that pool. Like, when they start legislating natural resources policy, because we vested that authority and that power in the Natural Resources Commission through Proposal G of 1996. And I'd like to remind people that was a referendum of the people. That was the wishes of the people. And to step around that not only defies the process that's legally been installed, it defies the wishes of the people.
Yep. And it sets
And
a dangerous precedent.
it does. And here's the thing too. If you're a stakeholder group and you got money to burn, right? And you decide, like, well, I'll say baiting, okay? Just because it's a conversation point. I'm the president of the National Zebra Association, and we've got millions of dollars in the bank, and we've got a professional lobbyist, we've got attorneys on staff, we hire our own biologists to say what we want them to say, and we can afford to influence. Well, how do we influence? Well, I'm going to go to a legislator and I'm going to max out the campaign contribution, whatever it is. I'm going to write you a check for 10 grand, and I'm going to buy you lunch, and I'm going to talk to you about all the reasons that we need your vote for baiting. Now, that's not pay to play. That's not dirty, right? Letter of the law, no law was broken in that exchange. There was a legal contribution given to a campaign. They can buy a legislator lunch. That's not a problem. They can, as a constituent or as a lobbyist, express their wishes and their views to the elected representation. Everything in that transaction is legal. But you and I both know it's also dirty.
Yeah.
We know what that is.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should ever be able to buy influence over natural resources in that manner. I don't like it. And I'm not going to accuse any one organization, but I'm just going to say I think some of those things happen. And realistically, Michigan ranks what, 49th for government transparency and corruption?
Yeah, we don't have a very good batting average.
Yeah. So, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole there, but all that to say, I get a little nervous when I see the legislators start to rattle the saber and threaten and say, well, if you don't, we will. That's a slippery slope. And once you start down that road, it's easier to do it again. Well, you did it before. Well, yeah, okay. Well, why not that? And you did this over here.
Right.
Who's to say what's more worthy? And again, it's the eye of the beholder, the politics of the situation. Are the Democrats more concerned about this? Republicans more concerned about that? And it becomes real messy real fast. And I think that the best, most effective way is to continue to utilize the framework of the system that we have, even though it's flawed, and I agree it could use reforms. I get nervous when the legislature gets involved. What's your thoughts on that, Brad?
I'm of the same camp. Uh, the baiting thing really irritated me from get. So I'm not even going to talk about it from the baiting aspect. Like, I don't like the fact that the legislature is the one driving that bus right now, as far as what they're trying to push through. I think that should be handled through different avenues. But as far as when Prop G was put into effect, I was 13 years old. I didn't have a dog in that fight. But as I've gotten older and I look at the process and I look at the reasoning for why it was implemented, I fully support it. Um, I think there's politics no matter what. We just talked about that. My biggest concern when you start legislating things that should be up to a commission or up to a body that is devoted specifically to natural resources, that pendulum comes into play very, very big. If I'll just take Republicans for an example. If Republicans decided they wanted to implement some really drastic, sweeping legislation that has to do with hunting, and it got passed, and it really pissed off a bunch of Democrats, well, the next time the Democrats have that power, they're going to swing that pendulum back the other direction so aggressively and so hard that it could really cause a lot of problems for hunting in general. And that's not just hunting, that's anything that has to do with things that should be handled outside of legislation when it starts getting involved in legislation. My biggest concern anytime that is there's we see it all the time on the federal level. I mean, it's like somebody does this, and then the next time these people are in power, they're like, watch this, and they're like, and that's why we get these extreme lefts and these extreme rights and these huge swings. And all we want as a people is like, guys, just a little bit of sanity right here. Like, we don't need to be way over here or way over here. And that's where, when you start letting the legislature get involved in that, then you're playing a very dangerous game. You know.
You're absolutely right, and I've been just sickened at times by the partisan pettiness, and I'm going to throw rocks at both sides because they're both guilty.
100%.
There is legislation that has been passed both on a state level and a federal level that was nothing more than get back,
Yeah, it was
political retribution.
It's a big middle finger is all it was.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's not how I want my state or my country run. That does not serve the people. It doesn't serve the resources. It doesn't serve the best interests of the state of Michigan or the United States of America. Um, it good Lord, we could get on a serious soapbox on this stuff. Trying not to, brother, but God bless America. Um, it's so critical. Again, going back, that people understand there's no escaping politics. And I came to this conclusion a long time ago, being involved in deer advocacy, because I was that guy in the beginning. As soon as I saw the politics, I like threw up my hands, like, no, I ain't playing that game. That's not what Jordan Hoover's about. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. Y'all corrupt SOBs over there can do whatever you want. I'm out. And you know what that got done? Nothing.
Yep.
Because the reality is, you do have to play the game. You have to engage or you lose.
Yep.
And in this case, the deer lose.
Yep.
I couldn't sit the bench. I couldn't tolerate that. So I figured out how to navigate the politics and how to build relationships and how to gain traction on a grassroots level like we have. So politics aren't always a bad thing, right? Politics can be a good thing. And this whole $1 initiative is an example of positive politics in motion, where an issue was identified and a grassroots initiative brought that issue to the governing bodies and said, we want this fixed.
Yeah.
And that's the bedrock of America right there, is redress of grievance with your governing officials. And that's what we've done with one buck. We've sought redress of grievance through the proper channels in the proper way. That's how it's done.
Yeah.
But you have to engage. And a lot of outdoorsmen out there, they're like, Jordan, dude, I don't even watch the news. I can't stand politics. I don't want to be near it. I don't want to hear it. It disgusts me. I go fishing and I go hunting because I don't want to hear that crap. Like, that's my peace. That's my church, man. Don't bring politics to my church. Well, talk to your reverend long enough, even the reverend has some politics, you'll find out. Um,
Yeah.
it again, it funnels back to stewardship, and this advocacy policy stuff isn't everybody's bailiwick, and I absolutely respect that. But you know what? Support the guys that are on the front lines that are neck deep in this stuff. Stand behind them. You don't necessarily got to be the tip of the spear. There's a lot of supporting roles that can be played, like sending those emails, making those phone calls, maybe just showing up to a meeting and you don't speak, but man, you get up and you clap for the guys that really lay it out there and make a good speech. That's support.
Yeah.
That's engagement. Still, that's being present. That's being part of the process. You don't have to be a master orator or a poet or a politician. Just being in the room. It's simple. But politics is inescapable. It really is.
It's in every aspect of our lives, whether we want it there or not. So, like you said, you just got to be willing to play the game. You don't have to become a politician. You just got to be. You got to get in there and play the game. If you want to see any meaningful change in anything. So, well, Jordan, that pretty much wraps up everything I had. I don't have. The only thing else I have left to say is folks out there that are like I was and have just kind of checked out of the game. If any of this is tugging at you a little bit and you're like, man, yeah, please, I'm not telling you got to drive to Lansing. I would love it if you could. I understand not everybody can. I'm not going to be there, and it kills me that I'm not going to be there. But it doesn't take long to write an email, make a phone call, show some support. Jordan, I'll give you the end of this here. If this is your closing sales pitch right here to anybody that's listening to this, they're kind of still sitting on the fence, swinging a little bit, and they're not sure which way they stand. 60 seconds for you to give them your sales pitch or your elevator pitch.
All right. Well, the first thing I want to offer, I've said many times tonight, please come and support us. If you support what we're trying to do, please come to the commission meeting. Please send the emails. Please make the phone calls. And I was remiss for not saying this earlier, and I'm going to say it now. If you don't agree with me, if you absolutely detest $1 and you think it's the worst possible thing that Michigan could do, I want you to come to the meeting and I want you to say it. I want you to have your due. Again, send the email of opposition if you can't go to the meeting and you're just diehard opposed. You think this is wrong. You don't agree with me. Send the email. Oppose it. Speak up. I don't care which side of the issue you're on. But what I don't want you to do, those of you that are listening to this, I don't want you to sit the bench and then cry in your beer at the bar 3 months down the road or whatever it is and say, yeah, well, Michigan sucks, whatever, when you did nothing. Don't do nothing. Don't do nothing, because apathy is what put Michigan hunting in the state that it's in today. Lack of engagement. I don't care if you oppose me. You have the right to your opinion, and I still want you to be heard. You have every right to be heard in full. So I encourage you, whether you support, whether you oppose, communicate with the commission, communicate with the department. I mean, you can call me up at home. I've given my home phone number out on other podcasts. I'll do it now. 906-524-2258. Reach out to me. I'll have a conversation. You want to give me an earful? I'll hear it. You want to encourage me? I'd certainly appreciate that too. I'll make myself available. That's part of what I do. We're in a special place right now, a place that Michigan's never been before in my lifetime. As I said earlier in this podcast, 30 years ago, it was my father sitting in front of that commission table having the same conversation. And it's time for Michigan to break the cycle and step boldly into the future of incredible possibilities for Michigan deer management. It's time.
Right on, man. So there you have it, folks. Jordan, I appreciate you coming on again, man. I'm hoping after April 8th we can jump on another podcast, and I'm really hoping that it's a little bit of a celebratory, and we can just you can give some shout outs. You can, hopefully there's some really good things that come out of this. Work is never done. This is just one step, folks. If this, regardless of which direction this ends up going, the fight's still there. I really hope people don't check out Hunting Michigan completely if things go awry. Just remember there's always a fight there, and this is only, again, this OBR is one step in a system of things that hopefully the more of this happens, the more positive effects come out of it, and the easier these fights become. But stay engaged. Appreciate everybody for listening. Jordan, safe travels when you come down for the April 8th meeting. And if anything pops up in the meantime, let me know and we'll jump on. And I'll put together, I'll keep it to 3 minutes. I'll put a video together and send to you. And if you can get that to somebody, I'd greatly appreciate that, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your platform with me and having me on this evening, Brad.
I appreciate it, man. And we only went like 2.5 hours, man. We did a good job. So, all right. Thanks a lot, man. We'll talk soon. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. Take care. And that wraps up the conclusion of my discussion with Mr. Jordan Hoover. Jordan, once again, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate the candid conversation. And for folks that are watching on YouTube and are wondering, where the heck am I? Because I'm definitely not in my studio. I am sitting in my hotel room on Monday night, the night before this episode drops, because I forgot to do my sign off post recording with Jordan. So I just wanted to jump on, let folks know. I thought it was a great conversation. Remind folks again, the April 8th meeting is rapidly approaching. If you can, please get to that meeting. I know it sounds hypocritical of me to say I'm not going to be there. I promise you guys, if there was any possible way that I could be there for that meeting, I absolutely would be there. I will be there for the May meeting. So, that doesn't do nearly the justice that being there for April would do. But if you cannot make it for any reason whatsoever, do as Jordan suggested. Please go to nrc@michigan.gov and send an email to the NRC Commission. Be respectful, be concise to your points, and let them know your thoughts on everything. Be honest. Whether you're for OBR or against it, I encourage you to reach out and have that conversation. You can also, like Jordan said, you can go to the NRC portion of the Michigan Department of Natural Resources website, and you can find the names of the commissioners. I think 4 of the 7 have their own email addresses listed, and you can email them as well. They all have phone numbers, so if you want to call them and talk to them, I highly encourage you to do so. Guys, this is the future of hunting here in the state of Michigan, and it is up to us as the hunters to let them know what we feel needs to be done, but not done because of what we want on a personal level, what's right for the resource and what's right for the future of deer hunting here in the state of Michigan. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, choking on my spit here. We'll talk to you again soon. This is Wild Spirits Outdoors. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Wild Spirits Outdoors. We appreciate you joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, follow, and share wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us grow the tribe and keep on chasing the wild. Stay connected with us on Facebook and Instagram at Wild Spirits Outdoors, and also on YouTube at Wild Spirits Pod. You can also head over to www.wildspiritsoutdoors.com for more content. Until next time, chase the wild, feel the spirit,